Welcome to this episode of our research
and seminar series. And this episode will be considering the types and classifications of research. It's essential that we know what type of research we are conducting and what methodology we are going to be adopting in order to ensure that we make the best out of whatever we are doing. And that is why it's necessary to classify research and to know the types involved. I've received many questions over time that how do you know if you're conducting a primary study, a secondary study, a qualitative study, a quantitative study? How do you know? And what type of research am I actually conducting? I've heard most people talking about things like this, and it becomes expedient that I consider the types and classification of research. So basically, what do we have? Now we have different types of research based on the school of thought and then the person conducting the research. Now, when we're classifying research, we classify it based on 1, purpose, 2, the approach, 3, the research design, 4, the time dimension, 5, the data source. So these are basically different classifications of research that determines the type that you're conducting. So the next time someone asks you that what type of research are you conducting, feel free to tell them the type based on this classification. So let's proceed.
Let's go. The first one is basically classification based on purpose. And the goal of this is actually to expand theoretical knowledge, to know what is available in theory, what people are doing about a particular phenomenon. An example is if you're studying quantum mechanism without a specific application, which means you just want to know what theories have been said about quantum mechanics and what you can do with that. The goal is basically understanding and nothing more. Now, the next type of research by virtue of classification by purpose is applied research, and the goal is aimed at solving practical problems. An example is if you are doing research on improved irrigation systems for farmers. The goal is that you are trying to work to solve a particular problem. So you have realized that there is irrigation problem for farmers. You want to inquire how can you develop resistant varieties. That's actually an applied research, and that classification is based on purpose. The goal is problem solving. The next classification that we need to know is classification by approach. And for that one, we have qualitative, quantitative, and then the mixed method. Basically, qualitative research focuses on meaning, experience, and interpretation of these experiences. So anytime you hear anything about qualitative research, it's basically about the experiences. What do people have to say about something? How do they explain things? So what are people saying? So there's avenue for people to express their views and opinions. That's how you know a qualitative research. Data basically is usually by words, narratives, interviews, and observation in a qualitative research. An example is if you are interviewing patients to explore their experience of healthcare. You can't just get experience of people without asking them, so you interview them. They have the liberty to talk and explain. That's one of the things about a qualitative research. It is quality, not quantity. Now, the next classification by approach is quantitative research. So there, what we do is that we focus on measurement and statistical analysis. Our focus is on numbers, on graphs, and metrics. Example, if you are conducting a survey on 200 students to analyze their test scores, what you are doing is that you are carrying out a quantitative research. The goal is to check how one thing differs from another, patterns in demographics. That's what you do when you're carrying out a quantitative research. Numbers are involved. We have a mixed method research. When we talk about mixed method research, basically what we're talking about is a combination of the quantitative and the qualitative method. So you are combining both quantity, that's numerical, and then the quality, that's words, that's numerical, and then interviews. So in terms of approach, you look at the graphical, the graphs, the numbers, the metrics, and then consider the experience of people, the virtue of interviews, focus group discussions, and all what have you. So basically, that's what the mixed method is all about. And if you are considering a mixed method, one thing you know is that it is both the stress that is involved in a quantitative and a qualitative study that you are going to be imputing into this type of research. That makes it more powerful, and that makes it more complicated. So it's a complex approach. Now we have classification by research design. And when we talk about classification by research design, what do we mean? We mean we're trying to describe the characteristics of a phenomenon. An example is a demographic profile of rural farmers in Benin State. So you are trying to just describe, you are kind of a descriptive research. What are the properties of these people? What do they have in common? What do they share? What can we say about them? That is an example of a descriptive research. Another type of research by virtue of classification by research design is an analytical research, what we call an exploratory research. And what is that? It basically goes beyond description. What we do is that we try to analyze causes and relationships. The goal is what? Is to examine what? Causes and analysis. This means cause and effect. Example is if you are trying to explain how education level affects farm productivity. What you're trying to check is cause. How what? Education level is the cause. What does it affect? The farm productivity. Does increase in knowledge actually determine how well farmers will do? That is an example of an analytical research. Then we have what is called an exploratory research. This is used when little is known in order to identify new problems or questions. So you're trying to explore. Is also one of the type of research by virtue of research design classification. An example of an exploratory research is investigating students' use of AI tools in education. You want to know what is it doing? Is it increasing knowledge? Is it reducing knowledge? Is it affecting their capacity to study? What exactly is it helping them to cheat? Is it helping them to stay prompt? What exactly is it doing? That's an example of an exploratory research. Now we have what is called an experimental research. This is core in the key sciences where we don't theorize, we just observe phenomena in the environment. Maybe there's an outbreak of cholera, and then we go to experiment. What is the causal organism? How many people are having this kind of infection currently? It's called an experimental research. How can we cure cholera? How can we bring about a cure for Ebola disease? How can we bring about a cure for the COVID-19 pandemic? These are experimental research. Also, we have what is called a survey research. This is just you trying to know what is happening. It involves collecting data via questionnaires or interviews. You administer questionnaires, you get information from people. You're just conducting a survey. It's what happens most times when organizations are trying to know what is happening with their products in the market. So they conduct surveys either through emails or hand-filled questionnaires. Whatever the approach you feel is best. We also have classification by time dimension. When we talk about time dimension, means how long it's taking for the research to be conducted. And for that, we have what is called a cross-sectional research. That's the first type. And the goal is that for this, that data is collected over a short period of time, over a point in time, what we call the snapshot approach. An example is if you are making a survey, if you are taking a survey for job satisfaction in July 2015, 25, among, let's say, workers in Tesla. That is an example of cross-sectional research. Or maybe workers of any university in the world. That's an example of a cross-sectional research. We also have a longitudinal research, That's based on time dimension. And this one is based on data collected over time. The goal is to track trends and check the changes that are occurring over time. An example, if you are studying literacy over 5 years, what's happened to the knowledge of people over an extended period of time? That's an example of a longitudinal study. Now, there's classification based on data source. And the first one, what we call primary research. I've gotten many questions that when we say primary research, is it quantitative, is it qualitative, is it primary, is it secondary? Now, classification based on data source is another type and that school of thought. So, and one of the type of research we have in this classification is what we call a primary research. In primary research, we are going to the field to obtain first-hand information. First-hand information. So you collect data using surveys, interviews, and experiments. You are there to do it. It is not, you're not just collecting secondary. No. It is primary. You are on the field. You are there to collect it firsthand. You are asking the people what is involved and you are getting information from them straight. You are experimenting the subjects and you are getting information from them straight. That is an example of a primary research. Also, we have what we call secondary research. This one is not like what you did in primary research. It's like a direct opposite. What you do is that you get information from journal articles, from statistics, from archives. What have people said? Then you gather them together, collect data, and then you analyze to get something tangible. That type is called secondary research. It's what is conducted most times when you're doing research on GDP of economies over the past 10 years and all, and how it affects price fluctuations and all, and maybe that is what we do in secondary research. Most academic research basically combines both, but you must state your primary source clearly, because you say, okay, but can't I use both? Well, you can use both, but most times there's a core type of data that you're collecting that forms a basic trust of your research. I believe you have really been enlightened about the different type of research. Stay tuned and subscribe to our channel for more intriguing breakdown in this series of research and seminar. Thank you.